Our police department wasn't the best when it came to integrity.
The policies that we had weren't holding officers accountable.
New Orleans was the wild, wild west.
Race relations in New Orleans.
It can be a little iffy.
We've seen punitive, harsh police killings of black men and women and children.
There's countless crimes, there's countless number of things, like corruption from politicians or police officers. Lynn Davis attempted to kill a federal witness.
There's a reason the federal government had to come in. There's a reason there was a consent decree in this city. We have a rough history to reckon with.
I've had positive and negative influences from police. I've had a godmom reach as high as, first black female chief of police in Phoenix, Arizona, as well as, I've had my own personal encounters with police. In terms of New Orleans, think about the last 18 months and what is pushed to the forefront. Marching in some of these peaceful demonstrations in New Orleans with the people, it's always thinking about, how best to go about this idea of 1% better every day. If this is how we feel, I wonder how a police officer feels. I do wonder what motivates a police officer to wake up in the morning, put the shield on, and/or hide behind a shield.
I'm originally from Pascagoula, Mississippi, which is a little coastal town on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi. My father was a police officer with the Moss Point Police Department for 15 years before he medically retired.
If I don't have that tree cut down inside the house, it's gonna look like that before long. I'm glad it's not 100 degrees.
I know. I think one of the coolest things for me for this job is to be able to say that I'm like a third-generation police officer. Like, times have changed and policies have changed and culture's changed, but law enforcement, like, situation and calls are so similar.
People are still people.
Right.
But, I couldn't run a tag from the front seat of my car. I think stuff like that changed a lot.
Growing up comparatively in Pascagoula, you have like this slower paced coastal town. I feel like this is a good middle ground. It's like the smallest big city in the world, almost kind of feel to it.
And even inside New Orleans, there's so many different cultures and people.
With everybody I work with, it's kind of interesting. We can pick people out by region, by dialect, where we're from. They can pick people out from their neighborhoods by the way they talk.
See that? Yeah. So that had to be a big adjustment.
Yeah. One thing that really stood out that I feel like I had to tell you about, because you kind of forewarned me about this and I didn't believe you. The stigma of New Orleans Police Department because of incidents that have happened previously, especially through like the 90s and early thousands, you need to understand that whether that's occurring still or not, that's gonna be a stigma that you have to carry as a police officer there. The Crescent City Corps thing that I'm doing is why the department's losing that stigma. And it's because, especially for people out of town like me that don't know the culture, it's teaching me about that stigma. I felt ignorant after learning that because I'm dealing with people that know more about the uniform I'm in than I do.
We had the conversation a few times along with that of, the one thing you can't do in this job is take it personally.
Right.
No matter what happens, if you go to arrest somebody and they start pulling and pushing and trying to get away and run, they're not running from you. You can't take it personally. You start taking stuff personally and ego comes in. And that's when bad things happen. It's your job to be different.
You don't feel safe here? No, I don't feel safe. Okay. All right, no one here is gonna hurt you.
This is a city that'll embrace you, that'll take you in, feed you, look to create interpersonal relationships with, and want you to be a part of their community. This is something that's inviting. I mean, minus the history that makes New Orleans special, the feel that makes New Orleans special, it's the people.
This is Malik Bartholomew, y'all. He's the founder and proprietor of No Nola Tours, which specializes in history tours of the city of New Orleans with a specific focus on the roots of people of the African diaspora here.
New Orleans is a historical city with historical customs and traditions. So when you come to New Orleans and you eat the food, you see the music, you see the people, all of that is grounded in history. So history gives them a greater appreciation of all of the rich stuff that they are enjoying currently. Right now, 7th generation New Orleanian. I'm just honored to be here. I'm honored to show y'all around New Orleans. And hopefully at the end of this experience, y'all have taken away something that y'all did not know about New Orleans. All right, y'all. There was only one time that New Orleans was rich, and that was in the 1800s. In the 1800s, cotton is booming, so the plantations ship all of their cotton down, and from New Orleans, it's gonna travel to England, and for the first time, it's gonna fuel the Industrial Revolution. So in Virginia, in North Carolina, and South Carolina, they're gonna sell black people down the river. So that's where you get the term sold down river from. This is where you get the word Dixie, because the word Dix in French is 10, and you got paid in these $10 bills. So they started calling New Orleans Dixieland. And New Orleans was the richest city in the South. So when you see St. Charles Avenue, when you see all of the mansions in the French Quarter, that money built all of that. This land is called Congo Square, or Place of the Blacks. When African people started arriving and baptizing to Catholicism, the French say that on Sundays was the Africans' free day. That on Sundays they get to do whatever they wanted to do. Most Africans decided to gather together. So they would come to this ground, and this ground was outside the original city. It was outside of the wall. And this land was shown to them by the indigenous people. The indigenous people said that this land was sacred and holy, and that they would have special ceremonies on this ground. This was the communication center. Black people would communicate with each other. So meaning communicate was, you would run the house like, girl, I heard your master tell my master they plan on selling you on Thursday. You may want to run away on Monday. So this is where they would get their information from. Now, lastly, which everybody talk about, was this is the place of music. Now, in America, they would take away these African drums. But here in Congo Square, Africans are allowed to play the drums. Matter of fact, there's one beat, it's considered one of the foundational beats of American music. It go, uh-oh, uh-oh. That is called a bambula. That building, if you go to Africa, they go dunk, 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 uh-oh. It's the same beat. So as the Africans will play their drums and play their drums, eventually that beat becomes jazz music, R&B music, rock and roll. American music comes from out of New Orleans and it goes up the river. It goes to Memphis, it goes to St. Louis, it goes to, and then it spreads out to other parts of America. All of this is very, very important in understanding space and place, even when you're working around a certain neighborhood, knowing where people, how they operate in the communities that you work in. We're underneath the Claiborne underpass. Before this bridge was here, there was a beautiful green avenue. This is where African Americans will come here to shop, to get their car fixed, but etc. But it was the cultural artery. In the 1960s, the government ran the interstate through the black neighborhood. In the 1970s, you see a decline in black businesses in this area. By the 1980s, you're dealing with the crack epidemic. So this destroyed a lot of the economic activity here in New Orleans for the black New Orleans. You may see somebody playing underneath the bridge, and somebody may call for a noise ordinance. Well, guess what? These men are just simply trying to make money. Like, this is how they pay their rent. This is how they feed their family. So do you want them to play music, or do you want them to rob or steal from somebody? So these are complicated questions that y'all deal with every day with life situations, and it is a part of the culture and the makeup of New Orleans where we all have to keep in mind as a community.
It sort of feels like a us versus the world. And when I say us, I mean black people versus the world. I feel discouraged because we're still fighting for progress. And you always realize that sometimes you're gonna feel like you're behind the 8 ball in every facet. No matter what you do, you're behind this 8 ball. Some people will never understand because they've never been in a place to be in that position to understand. But I choose to see positivity in the ideas that we're creating for momentum.
Malik, would love to hear a little bit about your journey and how you came to join the Panther Party.
I'm 73 years old. This is the first time I ever been around this many police. On September the 15th, I was involved with a shootout.
Although we are not nonviolent people, we will resist this by any attempt by the fascist power structure to pursue the murderous plan of genocide on the black people of this country.
They came to put us out of an abandoned public housing unit. And that public housing unit that we was using as an office, we was also starting a drug treatment program. That was a thing with us to try to help those who was on drugs. A little over 100 police shooting in a house. So after that 20-minute shootout, maybe 35,000 rounds of ammunition shot. No one was injured. We went from there to court to death row, all in one day. It took the jury only 30 minutes to find us innocent of all charges. That's from a 20-minute shootout with 100 police to a 30-minute jury to find us innocent. With that, my life have always took the change. I want you to understand that because I want you to understand that the only reason why I done this, that we got to put our differences aside. It's too much at stake. If we would come together under what Fred Hampton once said, he said, you don't fight racism with racism. Fight racism like you fight fire.
We don't think you fight fire with fire, bitch. We think you fight fire with water, bitch. We gonna fight racism, not with racism, but we gonna fight with solidarity.
From as long as I can see black people being wrongfully put in these positions, I mean, we talk about growing up and you get shown, you know, images of Emmett Till. To say this last couple of years, yeah, the last couple of years where social media has been prevalent to where it's been pushed in a feed where you can't run and hide from the truth. I mean, there's countless names at this point. I mean, countless. And being a dad, or at least being a son of two black parents, they've always told you, hey, when you get approached by a cop, you answer them in the most polite manner, you look them in the eye, and at the same time, you make yourself not a threat. How do you go about addressing that? Like, how do you make yourself not a threat? How do you go about yourself not being you?
I feel like a lot of us cops, the stress and everything, you know, like some people have to look for something to find, you know, relief or whatever. You know, to me, it's like, this is it.
Everybody.
You know, I mean, like, we gotta find something, you know? Because it can be stressful. We're Afro-Latinos. My grandmother was Native, and on my grandfather's side of the family, they're Afro. And came to the US, New Orleans, when I was 12 years old. Grew up in a family of 4 siblings.
Whew, I was so lost. It was very, very hard in the beginning. 4 kids, no English language, nothing. Oh my goodness, it was very hard for me. I was very afraid, many things. It's not only one thing. But I was happy because I was with my 4 kids, but I'm very, very strong.
It was very accidental. I never thought I'd be a police officer because I did not like cops. Based on my experiences growing up as a teenager, I thought they were rude and just cruel towards Hispanics. And I didn't feel like it was fair. And so I never wanted anything to do with police and law enforcement. I always felt like I'm not gonna treat people the way we were treated, or how I want to have this experience where if someone gets pulled over, I wanna treat them just like I want my mother to be treated. You know, you already know like the fear that she has being pulled over by a cop. Just thinking like this could be my parents, you know, being pulled over, treated a certain way, you know, so I do the best I can to treat people with kindness and just don't take away their dignity. It's kind of hiding, but it's a prayer that my mom, you know, gave me for police officers.
You're very, very pretty. This prayer is so amazing. And I always pray for all the police officers.
One of the things, like, you know, we talked about faith, you know, especially here in the city of New Orleans, you know, you have a lot of people that they go by faith, you know, and so I really believe like if officers don't have any type of faith, it doesn't necessarily have to be a specific, you know, but if you have any type of faith, I feel like you'll be able to treat people with love, you know. We all one family, the human family.